Good afternoon, everybody. This particular talk will be about the Bachelor of Arts Honours Physical Education and School Sport degree at the University of Wolverhampton. My name is Nick O'Leary, and I'm fortunate enough to be joined by Amy Bywater, who is a fellow lecturer, and perhaps more importantly still, two level 4 or first year PE and school sports students, Jessica Howard and Connor Rowney. And in my honest opinion, I think what they have to say is probably more important than potentially myself and Amy as the two lecturers. If you can move the slide on a little, Amy, for me. Thank you. Okay, what we're going to do this afternoon, relatively briefly, is give you a brief explanation of the course. That will then be followed by the students' views of starting what I'm now going to refer to as the PESC degree, PE and School Sport. And then we're going to give you an opportunity to take part in a mini lecture, which, interestingly enough, the content would be very, very valuable to the two level 4 students, given one of their modules is looking at this area. So they get two benefits here to presenting. One is it helps them with the module, and two, obviously, we're delighted to have them on board to help us out. Our PE degree has been going at the university now for approximately 18 years. This is a new version of that degree, and in our opinion, it is the most up-to-date, current, and I think most effective degree that we have run at the university. Our course structure, if you can move us on, Amy, with the slides. I'm going to give you a brief structure of our year, the kind of lectures, how many you do per week, what our expectations are, what you can do with the degree, and then we'll have a little bit of a look at the content. Rather interestingly, we structure the year now into 4 quarters. And the advantage of doing 4 quarters for students when they first arrive is that they only have to deal with one module to start the university experience off. And of course, what that does is it gives them plenty of opportunities, to focus on that module, but is also beneficial in terms of getting used to university systems, making friends with each other, and getting to know the lecturers. In other words, at the start of the degree, they're not overburdened, or you're not overburdened with a great deal of academic work. When we move into the second quarter of the degree, or the second part of it, obviously the number of modules increases. And generally speaking, as a rough guideline, you'd probably get somewhere in the region of around 3 to 4 lectures per week once we get the first quarter out of the way. Obviously, we expect you to take part in all the lectures, whether they be online or face-to-face. And obviously, we generally expect 3 things when you're not being lectured by us. The first one is to complete independent tasks, because those tasks are ones that move your knowledge forward. 2, we'd like you to get experience in schools. And 3, we'd like you to develop your CV by getting additional teaching and coaching qualifications. So those, I think, are the three requirements that we would expect outside of lectures. Obviously, the degree being PE and school sport, the focus is on developing teachers either for primary or secondary physical education. And we emphasize both equally within our degree. We're very, very keen, obviously, to encourage students to go into the primary sector. Often students arrive with a preconceived notion that they're going to go into secondary teaching, which is great. But often a number of our students will change their mind and go into primary. And obviously we welcome that. And so the course is suitable for those of you that are thinking of primary teaching as well as secondary teaching. And if you decide not to go into teaching, which again is understandable, quite clearly you can then use the degree to go in other areas. And we have ex-students that are working in sports centres, that are sports coaches, working in sports management, and so on and so forth. So there are a number of career opportunities available to you. Amy, could you move the slide for me? Thank you. Put simply, we examine all 6 activity areas of the national curriculum equally. And by those 6 activity areas, I mean games, swimming, dance, gymnastics, athletics, and outdoor and adventurous activities. And we combine those activities with theoretical work. So a question that we'll often get asked by students is how much of the course is practical and how much of it is theory. Often that's a very difficult question to ask, or answer rather, simply because a lot of the practical lectures will be combined with theoretical work. And a lot of the theoretical work obviously has a practical outlet. But as a rough guideline, I think you'll probably spend somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of your time practically doing lectures. Okay. The type of theoretical things that we look at, obviously our main concern is how to teach and how to help children learn. That's our major focus, both in practicals, theory lectures, and practical and theory lectures. We look at the different abilities in physical education and school sport. So we don't all focus on just practical ability. We look at things like thinking skills and ability to get on with others. We take a look at health and fitness because those 2 concepts are very popular at the moment. PE examinations is another area that we focus on, given their importance in schools. So BTECs, GCSEs, and A-levels. We give you the opportunity, obviously, to undertake some research of your own choice when you get into the 2nd and 3rd years. And we underpin that by a lot of work on academic skills to help you with that, and research skills. And then we also do a great deal of work with you in terms of applying for training, teacher training in the 4th year, and obviously the getting of a job. So CVs, personal statements, communicating with schools, communicating with other universities, and so on. And at this point, if Amy flips the next slide for me, I and Amy will take a little bit of a break, and we'll allow the 2 level 4 students who have been with us for approximately 7 weeks to talk to you a little bit about what their views are on the first 7 weeks of this course. So over to Jessica and Connor.
Hi, my name's Connor, and I'm going to start off by talking about the university content in the first block on the PE and school sports degree. So it was pretty good how the first block was mainly looking at university systems and what was needed for our education. So as we joined in, it wasn't just like, this is what you've got to do, crack on with it, you know, we expect you to do this. They've kind of got that understanding that we are new students. There's a lot of us that haven't been through this kind of structure before. So the first block really sorted out where to find things, how to upload, importantly, assignments when we get around to them, what's needed for our education. So personal skills, writing skills that we may have looked at and been exposed to in sixth form, but how it's then extended in university in terms of the level of those skills, and just a general easing into starting uni. So it felt really comfortable. It allowed me to start the block 2 that we've just started, quite comfortably knowing where now everything is, how to upload things, what's expected from us, and also the personal skills that I need to work on and the writing skills that I need to work on to help me get better throughout my degree before I've actually started submitting assignments, so to speak. So I know what I need to work on before I get to those. So as I'm doing those assignments, I can look at how to improve it as I'm doing them rather than finding out my weaknesses once I've already done them. So I think the first block has been really good in terms of just getting you into the gist of uni and what it's all about, and getting comfortable with it, really. I'll hand over to Jess now, who's going to talk about help from staff.
Yeah, so as Connor said, the first block was mainly about our personal skills and figuring out all the university systems and everything like that. The staff were always available to be spoken to, so after lectures online, they'd always hang around for 5-10 minutes for any questions that you had, which I obviously sort of put your mind at rest if you've got anything that you're worrying about. They're always like emails that always respond within that day. So anything that you're worrying about or anything like that, they're always there on hand to give you that support that you might need, which is quite reassuring. As a new student, when I guess you've got loads of questions that you might think are silly, but they're always there to answer your questions that you do have. Again, approachability of staff. You know Nick, he's spoken before, he's a nice guy. He speaks a lot, but he's a nice guy. With Corona, we only met certain members of staff at the beginning. So we got to form a relationship with one member of staff before meeting the whole PE team, which I think made me feel a lot more comfortable because I've formed a relationship with one member of staff before just being thrown into loads of different staff. Unfortunately for me, that was Nick, but we won't say anything else. So yeah, staff on the PE course are really nice. I didn't meet Amy till my first practical lecture, but instantly it was comfortable. You can see that the staff are willing to help you in anything that you need, and that's only within the first block. So it's reassuring that they're always there for your best interest. Connor, do you want to speak about online lectures?
Yes, so obviously with all the virus and stuff that's going around at the moment, obviously lectures a lot of them have been online to start the year, and it keeps dipping up and down depending on what the government decide what they want to do. But it's been really easy to kind of get involved with those online lectures. It's been really easy to see where you can access those, and they've just been really enjoyable. So it doesn't, half the time it doesn't feel like you're on an online lecture because you've still got that same input from obviously the lecturers, and you've still got the same input from the rest of the course, the students on there as well. So once you get talking into it, you kind of forget where you are because you're still kind of taking part. And I think that it's really important that the online lectures have carried on because you've still got that interaction with other people that you may not have been getting, or you've been able to ask those questions that you might need to know straight away, or have that chat with someone. So I think it's really good. And leading on to Jess with the approachability of staff, it's been really good that in the online lectures that the staff have made an effort to join other lectures. So during the first week, first block, the lecturers joined each other's lectures to kind of introduce themselves and who else they were, because they knew that, they might have had 10, they haven't met the other 10, and Amy might not have met the other 10. So they made that effort to kind of join in and still introduce themselves, and they're still there for help, which was pretty good. So I'm going to lead on to Jess, who's going to talk more about the practical lectures now.
So although most of it has been online, we still have had that face-to-face interaction with the lecturers, which I think is really beneficial. Although we can't do it as much as probably beforehand, I still think it's important to be able to meet face-to-face and be able to have those discussions face-to-face for the people that might not feel comfortable online. And those have also been enjoyable. I enjoy practicals. I enjoy the interaction between other people physically. So meeting up with the lecturers, being able to have that maybe more in-depth conversation that you might need about something. And I think that's really, really beneficial to be able to see each other and other people on your course too, so you get to form relationships with those before when you're going to have to work alongside them as well. Connor?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and especially in terms of the safety wise as well. It's really apparent that it's really safe. So they've put all the stuff and guidelines in place so that even when you turn up during this difficult time, that it's as normal as it can be, while still kind of looking after you and looking after your health at the same time. Help from others. So during the first week especially, there was a lot of workshops that was available to attend, that might have looked at writing skills, research skills, obviously referencing, that's a big one in university. That was a big one for me. And they were really helpful in terms of you could access them yourself if that was a weakness that you picked up, and the university staff were there to kind of help you along, being able to have the student services if you've got anything wrong with your financing issues that you currently have, and anything kind of like that. Any questions you've got, they're always there to help you with. I think that's pretty good, because you don't never get stuck with anything. You don't have to kind of sit there and go, no one's got an answer to this for me. So you kind of always know that if you get in touch with either student services or your lecturers or the PE staff, and even staff from other courses that I've been lucky enough to be involved with before I come to uni, that I knew Ali Forbes off another degree. Even other staff from other degrees can help you guide on other degrees as well, because they have a general knowledge of the whole sports faculty, and they're all like a big family. So it's all pretty good. Jess, you want to add anything else to that?
I'd also say your personal tutor. So we all get assigned a personal tutor at the start of the year, and you have meetings with him throughout the year. So mine's Jimmy Jennings, and same for Connor. So you have meetings with him to discuss anything that you're worried about, anything in university in general. Obviously, you can speak to your lecturers about course-specific things, or you could speak to him and he'll try and contact the lecturer for you. I think that's quite reassuring that you can speak to him at any time for any support that you might need with anything.
Yeah, so just to end on that, I think just the communication from the PE staff as well. So we always know where we need to be and when, at least a few days before. So we never like the night before, and we're like, messaging each other on our WhatsApp group, like, do we know what we're doing today? Do we know where we are, who we've got? It's quite helpful with that, knowing what we're doing, and it just makes it really comfortable and really easy to kind of go through it. I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about that.
Okay, can I thank both of the students for their perceptive comments? And now we move to Amy, who's going to do a very mini short lecture to give you a little bit of a taste of the kind of things that we discuss at the start of the PE degree.
Thank you, Nick. So yeah, the intention of this last part of our session and introduction to the PE and school sport degree, if you like, was just for you to be able to participate in a very short mini lecture as a taster session, if you like. And Jess and Connor that are here with us now actually had this as a very small part of a wider lecture as one of our first modules that we cover with our first year students. And that module in particular is called Sport as Subject Matter for Physical Education. So as part of that, really, we start by trying to use students' own experiences in PE from school and in sport generally to reflect on what they actually understand as sport and physical education. So you can see on the screen now, one of the tasks that we set students last week was to actually try and define sport and physical education as terms. and also try to consider what the similarities might be between sport and PE and some of the differences as well that we might find between those different concepts. So if you're watching this as a recording later on, what I'd recommend you do is pause at this point and just take a moment of reflection and see if you can actually define these terms. If you're there right now, if you want to, in the question and answer box, you can contribute some suggestions. But the questions at this point, as you can see, are what is sport? What is physical education? What are the similarities between sport and PE? And what are the differences? So you're welcome to have a go at this point. Nick, I'm thinking I'm going to move on at this stage. I don't know if it's the same for you, but I can see 8 of us participant-wise at the moment.
Happy for you to move on should you wish to do so.
Okie doke. So I'll keep an eye out in the question and answer box. Please do contribute, guys. Ask any questions that you want to as we go through. We'll be able to answer some, hopefully, at the end of this little mini session as well. So I'm going to start really by defining sport and what we mean by sport. And often most students within the PE degree, such as this one, will have had lots of experiences actually competing in sport. And very often that happens to be in different games, whether that's individual sports or team sports in particular. And if we actually focus on defining the term itself, here's just some key words. So we could say that sport is competitive. It's very traditional in a sense. So there's long-standing historic roots within various sports and how they should particularly be played. You could say that sport's quite performative. So we're usually seeking an outcome in particular by participating in sport, and sport involves, whatever the activity, some sort of performance in some sense, usually against other people, I suppose you could say as well. So Nick, were you going to speak then? Sorry. No, sorry. So sport also, you could say, is about ensuring participation. So it's often used as a tool in PE in particular to encourage large groups of people to participate and be able to say fit, healthy and active through a particular sport or game. So there's some keywords for sport initially, and you can see perhaps most importantly at the end, when we think about sport, we're often concerned with winning, and that's what I meant by the end goal or a desired outcome, if you like. So competitive performance, aiming to win, very traditional, and it allows for lots of mass participation, you could say. So that's sport. I'm just going to move now to how we might define physical education. So we could say that PE involves some skill development, but it doesn't actually have to involve sporting activities. So what we're saying here is that you can develop skills, but you don't necessarily actually have to teach, for example, rugby, football, netball, etc., specific sports in order to develop skills. So an example in primary school or with early years children, for example, could be that PE consists of physical activity with a focus on play. And that's play generally, exploring, for example, rather than playing in specific sports. So that's our first point. And we also explored and shared last week that PE might also be a concept which is much broader than sport itself. So it encompasses sport. It's a key part of the subject area, but we also, of course, within physical education, embrace other activities such as dance and the activities which Nick shared with you earlier. So gymnastics, outdoor and adventurous activities, for example, and many more, an extension to that list. So we could also say that PE on its own, really, there's no need for all forms of PE to actually promote competitive behaviour within the subject area. And that competitive behaviour is quite essential in sporting environments, but it's not completely necessary within a physical education context on its own. So this is where we often get many debates in terms of should activities be competitive or not, etc. So what we're saying here is that in PE, we don't necessarily have to promote competitive behaviour. And the final point here for this slide is just that the hope with the delivery of high quality physical education, if you like, is that it should benefit all pupils in a particular group and not just a select few. And it's an important point here that we finish with on this slide, that doesn't mean that within the context of PE that we can't identify sort of talented individuals or particular sporting potential, so to speak. So there we go. That's the definition that we sort of start with in defining physical education, and we'd normally have discussions around this as well, and just try and iron out really what people have brought to university in terms of their own experiences with sport and PE, and then using that within the first year of the degree as a foundation to expanding our views of the subject area and the potential of it. So just to share some differences from that first task between PE and school sport, I'm offering this slide for now. So you can see on the left-hand side, definitions or further definitions, if you like, of PE. On the right-hand side, more definitions of sport. And I think Nick will help us in a moment in terms of highlighting one or two really key differences. But for now, if we summarise PE, we could say that it's usually delivered in an educational setting. You can expect really to have large numbers of students, for example, in a year group, year 7, 8, 9, etc. And within those groups, of course, you're going to have children with varied skill levels in particular. And so in a PE setting, we're not just concerned with skill development, but developing children as a whole person and being concerned with their personal development generally. And there's often very much, it's a requirement really to focus on the individual or the child and to change what we do so that it's more inclusive, for example. So in a PE setting, we might be concerned with learning skills, knowledge, and gaining understandings. And the process overall is very important to those particular outcomes. In terms of the sport list then that we've got here on the right-hand side, you can be thinking now of the key differences as we go through this, and then Nick will summarise. So sport is often delivered in a sports setting. You can expect fewer numbers of participants in that sense, often if they're sports teams in particular. And within a sports setting as well, you'd expect the participants to actually have a much higher skill level. It's going to be less varied as compared to the PE context. And with sport, we're more concerned with training, if you like, so developing physical competence or skills, and also aspects of competition in more of a training environment as well. So our focus in delivering sport is often on the activity or delivering the sport itself. And really here you're learning about performing the sport, you're learning about how to participate in a sport, and of course how to compete within that setting as well. And we can see here and link back to our earlier definition of sport as well, but it's the end product that's deemed really important in a sports setting, and not so much the process and the enjoyable and beneficial experience that might lead to that in a PE setting. So Nick, while I take a deep breath, do you want to sort of summarise what you think are the key differences from those lists?
Amy, thanks very much. I think it's fair to say that what Amy's done there is given a very, very good summary of perhaps the traditional similarities and differences between those two concepts of PE and sport. And we're not in any way being critical of sport, because we do recognise that sports coaches will also focus on the child and also will focus, on the process of learning, for example. But perhaps the emphasis is not so great in the coaching world as it is perhaps in the PE world. And I think, to summarize, recognizing we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left, I think it's fair to say that physical education is very child-centered. Sport might be a little more activity or sport-led, the game. And I think it's probably fair to say that in PE and education generally, then we're focusing on the process of learning and what the child learns as they go through the PE lesson. Whereas, as Amy's eloquently already said, the emphasis in sport is perhaps a little more focused on winning and the product at the end. Amy, are you happy for me to conclude?
Yes, of course. Go ahead. Yeah.
And I think with us having 2 minutes left, we will welcome any questions on anything that we've done. We hope we've given you a brief but concise overview of the structure of a university year and the PE degree specifically. We hope that the insightful comments of the 2 level 4 students, Jessica and Connor, and thank you for your input, has been useful, and they've given you some idea of what it's like to start the degree here at the University of Wolverhampton. And I hope you've got a feel from the work that Amy has put on the screen and talked about, that clearly, while the PE degree is very practically focused around teaching and learning, we will get you to think, we will challenge you, and we will potentially challenge your assumptions to move you forward. And so we would welcome you on board next year for the PE degree, should you care to consider this degree and all that it entails. Thank you for your time.